Welcome back, everyone, to season 4 of the Truth and Freedom podcast, where awakening begins with asking the question most people are afraid to ask. I'm your host, Dr. Amzallag, and this is not just another podcast. This is a journey into awareness, courage, and truth. So, trauma is real, let's face it. What happened to you mattered. It shaped your nervous system, your beliefs, your relationship, and the way that you learn to survive in this world. Naming that truth is not weakness, it's clarity. But there's another truth that often gets avoided because it's less comfortable to hold at the same time. Trauma explains behavior. It does not excuse staying stuck in it. And freedom lives in the space where compassion and responsibility meets. For a long time, people weren't allowed to talk about trauma at all. Pain was dismissed, minimized, or spiritualized away. Now the pendulum has swung into the opposite direction. Trauma is finally being acknowledged, but too often is being used as permanent identity rather than starting point for growth. Understanding where your patterns came from is important, but understanding alone does not change them. Responsibly is what turns insight into transformation. Now, most people don't avoid responsibly because they're lazy or unwilling. They avoid it because responsibility can feel like betrayal of the part of you that learned to survive under impossible circumstances. Letting go of old coping mechanism can feel like abandoning the version of yourself that kept you safe. But healing isn't about erasing that version of you. It's about updating it. It's about honoring what those strategies once did for you while recognizing when they no longer serve your life. Trauma lives in the body, not just a story. That's why intellectual understanding without embodied practice leads to repetition. You can explain your triggers, your attachment style, your reaction, and still find yourself responding the same way. Responsibility doesn't mean blaming yourself for what happened. It means choosing what you do with the impact it left behind. It means noticing when your past is driving the present and gently but firmly intervening. This is where the conversation often gets uncomfortable. Because responsibility doesn't feel like empowerment at first. It feels like exposure. It removes the illusion that someone else will fix it for you. It asks you to regulate yourself instead of waiting to be regulated by others. It asks you to pause instead of react, to respond instead of repeat. And that work is quiet. There's no applause for it, but it changes everything. At Truth and Freedom Podcast, we don't believe in bypassing pain or glorifying toughness. We believe in integration. Trauma deserves compassion. Patterns requires accountability. You can hold both without contradiction. In fact, holding both is what restores agency. So when trauma becomes the explanation for everything, power leaks away. When responsibility is introduced, not as blame, but as choice, power returns. Now, engaged listeners like you already sense this. You've probably felt the moment when awareness stops feeling relieving and starts feeling heavy. That's the moment responsibility begins. When you realize that no one is coming to save you from the work of becoming regulated, honest, and aligned. That realization can feel lonely, but it also is the moment freedom becomes possible. So responsibility doesn't mean you heal alone. It means you stop outsourcing your growth. It means therapy becomes a tool, not a crutch. Insight becomes a guide, not a hiding place. You stop asking, why am I like this? And start asking, what am I choosing next? And those choices, small but consistent, embodied, rewire your nervous system over time. This podcast exists to support that shift, to remind you that trauma does not define your ceiling, to encourage you to honor your pain without surrendering your agency to it. Healing isn't about becoming untriggered, it's about becoming capable of staying present when discomfort arises, capable of telling the truth without collapsing, and capable of taking responsibility without self-attack. Now, if this work feels demanding, that's because it is. But it's also dignifying. Responsibility returns to yourself. It restores self-trust. It replaces helplessness with authorship. And authorship is freedom. Not freedom from having been hurt, but freedom from being ruled by it. So stay here. Stay willing to hold nuances. Stay committed to compassion without excuses and accountability without shame. Trauma may be part of your story, but responsibility is how you write the next chapter. And that choice, ladies and gentlemen, quiet, honest, and courageous, is where real freedom begins. So thank you all for joining me on this episode as to why trauma is real, but so is personal responsibility. And in our next episode, we will cover the why being nice is often a form of manipulation. So if you have dealt with being too nice with others at the expense of your own sanity, you should definitely tune in to our next episode. Looking forward to hearing your comments or suggestions on this podcast. Until then, my friend, stay awake, stay grounded, and stay free.